The students do typically like to engage and have conversations at schools like that. I find that the people who turn to violence are actually non-students. And this is kind of my example of how sometimes it's non-students. A non-student came up to the table and was like, "Is this your table? That's embarrassing." And then she went off on some personal anecdote about how her son wouldn't be here if it wasn't for her abortion. And she basically walked up to the table and flipped it over.
Some people join the pro-life movement in college. Some discover it in church. But for today's guest, the calling came the moment a high school best friend whispered a life-altering secret. And after that, Jessica Power realized she was the only one she knew willing to speak truth with love. That moment, a 16-year-old girl facing an unplanned pregnancy, a state law that unexpectedly protected her child, and a friend who refused to abandon her, set Jessica on a path she never could have planned. From leading UConn Students for Life, to convincing her university to add pro-life resources, to interning for pro-life organizations, and even a member of Congress. Jessica has spent every season of her life using her voice to defend the most vulnerable. Today, she serves as a New England Regional Coordinator for Students for Life of America, equipping high school and college students across some of the most challenging campuses in the country to confront the lies of the abortion industry, to create a culture of life on their campus and become the next generation of pro-life leaders. And when she's not forming student groups at Harvard or Yale, she's on the board of New Hampshire Right to Life, helping run a podcast that highlights the everyday heroes that are building a pro-life New England. This is Living Pro-Life. Hey, thanks for listening to Living Pro-Life. Make sure to be part of the growing base of people making Coalition Life happen. And so we ask you today, please consider donating $1 for our One Life campaign. Your $1 can help build a culture of life. Your $1 can help save a baby from the tragedy of abortion. Your $1 can help women in need who need us more than ever. Consider donating $1 today, supporting our mission here at Coalition Life, and ultimately helping to end abortion throughout our great country. Now back to Living Pro-Life. Well, welcome, Jessica. I'm glad you have you on the program. Welcome.
Thank you, Brian. I'm glad to be here. It's awesome.
Well,
thanks for having me.
Yeah, Jessica, it's, you're doing a lot of incredible work there at Students for Life. And I'll tell you, Students for Life, I'm a huge fan of Students for Life and the work that you're doing, especially up there in the New England area. But before we get too far in the whole Students for Life, I know you've got an interesting story of how you got into the pro-life movement. Tell us about that. And I think that started back in high school, right?
It did start in high school, yeah. So basically, I went to the March for Life, for the National March for Life for the first time in 2018 as a high school student. And it was just, my diocese went on a trip, as many dioceses do. And I was like, oh, that's cool. We get to go to Washington, D.C. So went down there, really had never really heard much about the abortion issue prior to that. I was raised Catholic, but my family never really talked about abortion. And I went to the March for Life, and just really going and having that experience with so many thousands and thousands of people holding signs and fighting for life really opened my eyes to how much of an issue the abortion issue truly is. And yeah, so then from there, I came home, knew I was pro-life, knew that was something that I definitely wanted to fight for and defend the right to life in my life. And later that year, so probably about 6 to 7 months later, my best friend actually got pregnant as a high school student. Yeah. Wow. And this was a friend that also went with me to a lot of church events. I think it just really shows even people in our churches, that this is the abortion issue is a real issue for everyone,
Yeah.
She got pregnant, and she was kind of in denial all summer about it. She only had told one friend. That October, she actually sat me down, and she was afraid to tell me because she knew that I was I was pro-life. She told me that she was going to have an abortion.
Wow.
And yeah, so now she was about 6 months pregnant. She's like, yeah, I'm going to have an abortion, but please don't tell anyone. So it was really tough because she literally had only told me and one other person. And the other girl she told was kind of like, oh, I'll support you in whatever you do sort of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, she tells me not to tell anyone. And I went home and I was like 17. So I'm like, this is like a really big thing to have on your shoulders. And and I did wind up telling my mom. I wound up kind of breaking down to my mom and being like, I don't know what to do. And I'm very grateful for my mom because she was really, really supportive in that moment and was just telling me like, you know, we can send her like whatever resources you can find. So at the time, I didn't know about a ton of pro-life resources. And that's why I really, love the work of Students for Life, because we do so much with our Standing With You, which is our directory of all the pregnancy resources throughout the country. And we really try to make sure that our students, including high school students, know about resources that are available to them. But I didn't know too much at that point. But yeah, so then I basically sent my friend a really long text that night with whatever I could find resource-wise. And then the next morning she had her abortion appointment or consultation, I think, scheduled. Wow. And I didn't hear from her. So I wound up texting her and I was like, what happened? And she was like, I'm too far along. I can't have an abortion. Yeah. So
wow.
I think, that was just really God working in that moment, because she also really could have gone across state lines, probably gone to like New York or somewhere that had more extreme abortion laws. And not that Connecticut's laws are great, but they at least limit abortion after viability. And yeah, so long story short, she wound up having her baby. The dad actually stepped up, and my friend and the father are no longer together, but he's raising her, and she'll be 7 in January. Wow. So yeah, so that was really how I initially got involved.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're saying that the father is now raising the child. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
That's incredible. Now see, that's a different type of story, I think, because I think a lot of people say, well, this mother is going to be burdened by this baby for the rest of her life. And, they tell these really sob stories that she can't do it on her own and these kind of things. The fact that the dad stepped up, that means a lot. Like that's a big deal. So what can you tell me about maybe that conversation? Of course, it's a very sensitive topic. How does that work? He stepped up and said, hey, I'll take care of this baby.
Yeah, so my understanding of what kind of happened there was she had told him that she was going to have the abortion, then kind of stopped talking to him, like after this had happened. She was like, I'm going to have the abortion, and then they weren't really talking anymore. So he actually had thought that she had the abortion like earlier on, so like that sometime that summer when she found out she was pregnant. Yeah, and then later on, he found out that she was still pregnant, and he reached out, and at this point, this was when she had already decided that, she was going to go through with the pregnancy. She was considering adoption at that point. But he was like, no, this is my daughter. Like, this is my child. Like, I'm raising her. And I don't think it was the prettiest situation, like family wise and things like that. But he's a really strong man and stepped up, and he's a single dad, but he's doing his best to raise his daughter. And he actually sent me pictures of her recently, and was like, oh yeah, like she's growing up, and that was just really special.
Wow.
So,
wow. Yeah. This kind of illustrates a lot of things. One, which is, the importance of men in these relationships. Secondary, the importance of legislation, with regards
Absolutely.
to abortion, and legislation, while in Connecticut, saved a baby's life, and one person saying that you can do this, right?
Yes.
It illustrates how multiple different fronts in the pro-life movement are really, really important. So, wow, I appreciate that story. Again, we're just talking with Jessica Power with Students for Life America. Jessica, tell us a little bit about the work of Students for Life.
Yeah, so Students for Life, we're a national organization. We've been around since 2006. And the main part of what we do is we build pro-life student groups throughout the country. We just hit 1,600 groups. So that includes middle schools, high schools, med schools, law schools, lots of different places. But we just hit 1,600 groups of students who are doing pro-life activism on their campus. So my job is I'm the New England regional coordinator. So I work with all of our current groups in New England, basically equipping them with all of the tools that they need to defend life on their campus. So whether that's doing trainings on pro-life apologetics or fetal development, lots of different topics, and then going onto campus and doing outreach. So like doing different tabling displays and really trying to change hearts and minds on high school and college campuses.
So I heard you're doing stuff at places like Harvard and Yale. Is that a true statement?
Yes. I have all the Ivy League schools up here in New England. So yes.
Is that must be a tough place to do pro-life work? Is that true?
It's very interesting. I think it's a different experience than a lot of the other regions. Well, it kind of depends on the day and the campus, but I will say, like, I think for the most part, we have more intellectual conversations on campuses, for example, like Yale. Those students can be really philosophical. That's not always the case. What I've actually noticed is it's not typically the students that are aggressive or doing crazy things, that the students who typically like to engage and have conversations at schools like that. I find that the people who turn to violence or just don't really want to engage and just laugh at you and give you dirty looks are actually non-students sometimes, like visitors, because those schools get a lot of visitors, like Harvard and Yale, just a lot of people, because they're pretty campuses and people love the Ivy League schools. So
interesting.
Yeah.
So, what kind of things are you encountering there? Of course, you've got these, God willing, really great conversations with these students, but others who might be trying to aggravate. What does that look like sometimes?
Yeah, so I would say an example of this was a few weeks ago. Basically every semester, Students for Life does a display that's it's called our campus tour. This semester, the topic was all human life is valuable. So basically it was kind of talking about abortion in relation to other human rights issues throughout history, and why we should value people for just the fact that they're human and no other arbitrary characteristic.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I was at Harvard, and this was about a week after Charlie Kirk's assassination. So definitely I was nervous to go back to campus that week for sure. It was definitely okay, how are people going to react to this? Yeah. And I had this was Friday of the week after his assassination. So I had done the display at a few other schools that week, and people had been pretty responsive and civil, and we'd had really good conversations. But basically at Harvard, and this is kind of my example of how sometimes it's non-students that are being violent. So the students were actually pretty good for the most part. We were having really good back and forth discussion. You get some that walk by and just give you a look or ignore you or whatever. But
sure.
It was towards the end of the day, and a non-student came up to the table. It was actually a woman pushing a stroller. She had like a 3 or 4 year old with her. She came up to the table, and I was over to the side, like talking to someone else. But she goes over to one of my students and was like, "Is this your table?" And they were like, they didn't hear it at first, so they were like, "What?" And she was like, they were like, "Yeah, it's our table, and we're Harvard Right to Life." And she's like, "That's embarrassing." And then she went off on some personal anecdote about how her son wouldn't be here if it wasn't for her abortion, and kind of just, it was very kind of hard to understand her story. Definitely would have loved to hear her story more if she stuck around and was willing to have a conversation. But instead, she basically walked up to the table and flipped it over.
Wow.
with the baby carriage in the other hand, and flipped the table over and then stormed off. No one was injured. Everyone was fine. But yeah, so that was just kind of an example of a non-student kind of getting into maybe not using the best means to have a conversation.
That's fair. That's very fair.
Yeah.
That's very fair. Of course, you guys got to pick everything up afterwards, which is, I'm sure, wonderful. Tell me about some of the positive things Students for Life is doing. I know this is you mentioned Charlie Kirk, post the Charlie Kirk event, of course, and also post Dobbs. Tell me kind of some of the successes of Students for Life recently.
Yeah, so I think one huge thing is the fact that, like I mentioned before, we just hit 1,600 groups. So we're continuing to grow more than ever, even over the past, couple of weeks since Charlie Kirk died. I've definitely seen growth in the organization. We've started a ton more groups of students really getting activated and wanting to get involved. I know that there was a student who she actually witnessed Charlie Kirk's assassination.
Oh, how terrible.
Yeah, it was crazy story. But she wound up reaching out to Students for Life right after that. And she was like, I was a witness, and while it's so terrible to be a witness of this, it really is showing me like how much I want to get involved and how I really want to like fight for what I believe in. So she's actually starting a Students for Life group in response to that happening.
Wow.
Yeah. So I thought that was just a powerful example. I would say in New England, I think, especially through Charlie Kirk, him being assassinated, I think it's definitely just encouraged the students I work with to want to fight even more. Obviously, it's a battle for life up here in New England. We're sometimes, the minority voice in the room. But I've definitely seen my students that I work with, because I did most of like my campus tour displays, which is the busiest part of the semester for me. Right after Charlie Kirk was assassinated, and none of my students canceled. I actually had students like more excited to go out and defend life. And I think just the topic of our display was so relevant with all human life is valuable, right? Yep. Preborn and born, no matter what your beliefs are, no matter what you think on a specific issue. I think my students were really excited to like go out and share that message. So yeah, we're definitely doing great work, really just trying to change hearts and minds and build a culture of life, in a time where, a lot of people, yes, were threatened by they felt threatened by the Dobbs decision. They felt like it was taking away their rights, and we're really showing them like, no, like to these women, like, no, we love you and your baby, and we want to show you that by changing the culture.
Wow. Again, we're chatting with Jessica Power with Students for Life in America. Now, Jessica, what are some things that people can do to get involved, of course, with Students for Life, but I'm sure there's a variety of other ways that people can get activated in the pro-life movement and ultimately see an end to abortion? What are some suggestions you might have?
Yeah, so there's so many ways you can get involved, no matter where you are in life. I would say if you're a student, definitely try to get involved with a group on your campus, or start your own group. And you can go to our website, and we have a button on our website. If you want to start a group, you can go there, or you can also email start@studentsforlife.org to start your own group. And if there's already a group, we can definitely plug you into that existing group as well. We've definitely had students before reach out and be like, I want to start a group on my campus. And we're like, hey, did you know this one, that it already exists, actually? So less work for you. Yes, that's definitely one way. I would say Students for Life Action. We currently have a campaign going on. We're calling it Playing the Trump Card on Planned Parenthood. So essentially, as many people probably know, that Planned Parenthood was defunded for 1 year through the Big Beautiful Bill, but that doesn't mean that they're permanently defunded. So there's a process called debarment. What that is the president has the ability to strip federal funding from organizations that aren't following certain federal regulations, basically from organizations that receive federal funding. And Planned Parenthood doesn't follow a lot of federal regulations. They've participated in Medicaid fraud, among other things, selling fetal body parts, things like that. So we're currently doing a campaign to try to get Trump to debar Planned Parenthood. So you can go to studentslifeaction.org/Trump card to get involved with that. And yeah, I would say there's just like other, plenty of other ways people can get involved as well if not a student. We run something called the Campaign for Abortion-Free Cities at Students for Life. And that's a way that alumni of Students for Life or just people in the community can get involved. And basically what that is it's a door knocking campaign where people go door to door and tell their neighbors about their local pregnancy center. We've done some research, and about 73% of neighbors can't name their local pregnancy center. So the Campaign for Abortion-Free Cities is an awesome way to get involved. And it's not just door knocking, that's part of it, going door to door, telling people about pregnancy centers, but it could also include sidewalk counseling, going outside of a Planned Parenthood or an abortion facility in your community and trying to give resources to women going in or praying outside the abortion facility as well. So lots and lots of ways that you can get involved for sure.
Well, Jessica, it's been an honor to have you on the program. You also have your own podcast. You're doing some of your own work there. So tell us about that and tell us about how you can get involved with, I believe it's New Hampshire Right to Life.
New Hampshire Right to Life. Yes. I am a board member, in addition to my work at Students for Life, for New Hampshire Right to Life. And in May, we launched our own podcast called the Ever Living Podcast. Really similar to what you're doing, but here in New England, we're trying to highlight the voices of everyday people who are doing pro-life work in the communities in New England and beyond New England. Obviously, we focus on New England a little bit more because that's where we are, but yeah, it's been great. And yeah, we'd love people to listen to our podcast as well. So it's, as I mentioned, it's the Ever Living Podcast. We're on YouTube, we're on Spotify, lots of different platforms, iHeartRadio. So awesome. Yeah.
Awesome. Great. Tell people again how they can get a hold of you and get a hold of Students for Life and how they can get involved.
Yeah. So if you want to get involved with Students for Life, you can go to studentsforlife.org. And as I mentioned, there's information on there on how to start a group. You can also email start@studentsforlife.org to start a group as well. If you want to keep up with me and the work I'm doing, you can follow me on Instagram. It's at New England _SFLA. And you can also send me an email at jpower, POWER, @studentsforlife.org.
Incredible. Well, Jessica, you're doing fantastic work. Thank you for your work at Students for Life. And thank you for standing for the preborn and the families that are surrounding them. So thank you. And we'll see you next time on Living Pro-Life.
Awesome. Thanks. Thank you, Brian. Have a nice day.